So now let's finish the second puzzle piece. First of all, I'm going to make piece 1 invisible, and I'm going to switch on piece 2, and I'm also going to rotate the reference image 45 degrees, and we have to rotate the spline as well. So let's rotate it 45 degrees like so, and I'm going to reset the axis to 0. And now let's make a copy of our template. I'm going to make this editable, drag out another copy, and let's move this down. Oh, we should switch off enable axis first. So let's move this down to about here. And this one we have to rotate minus 180 degrees, and then line it up with the reference image. And now I'm going to combine these two splines, and let's put piece number 2 into a spline mask object and drag our protrusions in there. So let's make the spline mask object editable and rename it to piece 2. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing that we did in the previous video in order to get our round corners. So I'm grabbing the line cut tool, and up here I'm going to make a cut from here to about here. I'm going to make this cut fairly close to the curve because I think the shape will just look a little nicer. So I don't want to follow the reference image, but rather create something that looks a little different, and like I said, I think it will look a little nicer if we continue this curve a little further before it transitions into the protrusion here. So let's select these 2 points, delete them, and let's tweak the tangents on these points here. So I'm using the pen tool again, lock tangent rotation is switched on, and I'm going to drag this tangent out a bit, and I'm going to drag this one out a bit. So now let's test the shape. I'm going to increase the detail of the spline. Let's see how that looks. I think the tangent down here could maybe be a little bit longer. Something like this. And I guess we could rotate these tangents up here just a tiny little bit to make that transition a little bit smoother. So this time I'm going to use lock tangent length and switch off lock tangent rotation. Let's rotate these tangents just a little bit, something like this maybe. Let's see how that looks. So I think that's looking pretty good. So now let's take care of the corner down here. And down here I'm going to make a cut from here to about here. Same procedure as before, delete these 2 points, grab these 2, and let's tweak those tangents. Okay, and that's looking pretty much the way I want it to look. I think I'm also going to rotate the tangents of this point like we did on the curve at the top of this piece. So let's switch on lock tangent length and just rotate these a tiny bit like so. Okay, so that's looking very good, I think. So next we're going to select the points on the right. I'm going to disconnect them and delete them. And let's delete these 2 points as well. And now we can make a copy of this piece and rotate it. And let's combine these 2 splines. to select the points up here and weld them together. Make sure you close your spline. And now we can rotate it back minus 45 degrees. And I'm also going to rotate the reference image back to 0. And next I'm going to select piece 1 and piece 2 and use connect objects and delete to turn them into a single spline. And we can now use the MoGraph cloner, set the mode to radial. We need 4 copies and we don't need any radius, so let's reduce that to 0. And I'm going to make the cloner editable and combine all of these pieces into a single spline. So let's put the puzzle pieces into the extrude object, and we can get rid of this cloner null here. And that's looking pretty nice. So let's go ahead and add some Phillip Caps to the extrude object, and 5 is probably a bit much. You can see that the geometry is intersecting here, so I'm going to change that to 2. Yeah, well, that's still a bit much, so let's bring this down a little further. Let's maybe do 1.5, 1.6. That's looking better. And if you do a close-up render, you probably want to add 1 or 2 steps to those Phillip Caps here. And also, the puzzle pieces right now are a bit thick, so I'm going to change the movement to maybe 10. That looks about right. Okay, so I think we're pretty much finished. Let's do one final render of this jigsaw puzzle in the front view. I'm going to use this view as the render view, and let's go to the render settings. I'm just going to increase the resolution of the image to maybe 1400. That should still fit on the screen if I render this to the picture viewer. So I think we have a pretty nice looking result here, and you can see that it was not that difficult to create this shape, and we didn't even have to spend a lot of time to do it.